An Oklahoma man who impregnated a 12-year-old girl when he was 24 is heading to prison for the next 2 decades in Midtown Tulsa, with a 12-year-old girl in mid-labor expecting to become a proud new father, but he ended up under arrest. They walked in just like any other couple would, excited to deliver their newborn child, said police. When officers arrived, Miranda Jara proudly said he was the father of the child the 12-year-old was about to give birth to.
Because their pit bulls took their neighbor's life. In February 2023, police were called to a home in San Antonio because 2 dogs were on the loose and were attacking an 81-year-old man. When they arrived, the 81-year-old man named Ramon Najera was already basically dead, and his wife was also attacked. It was said that the dog owners Christian Moreno and Albelin Schneider trained these dogs to fight. It was also said by neighbors that these dogs were always getting out of the backyard and attacking people. Whenever they told the owners to lock their dogs up, they would get mad and wouldn't really do anything about it. The pit bulls were previously taken by animal care services because they attacked someone, but then were given back to the couple. So because of this, their defense blamed animal services for returning the dogs to them. Again, people complained for years about these 2 pit bulls and how dangerous they were, but nothing was ever done until this 81-year-old was killed. This couple showed zero remorse or emotion and didn't even apologize to the family for what happened. They both pleaded guilty, and Abelin was sentenced to 15 years in prison and Christian was sentenced to 18 years.
Gruesome torture methods that you'll be glad you weren't around for. Part 1. The method of execution was a method used in ancient Greece where
all because, bro, they couldn't keep their pit bulls locked up, man. I heard stories, about pit bulls and things like that, but from what I seen, I thought they were like, nice caring dogs. I guess it just depends on the owner and what they have them do. Like I said, they said they had them fighting, so of course they were going to be aggressive. It's a shame.
flame at the bottom roasted you to death, and the head of the bull was designed in such a way that your screams would be filtered and contorted into the sounds of a real bull. On pirate ships, workers who refused to follow orders would be hung by their nails. Another method used by pirates was called keel hauling, in which the men were dragged under the ship until they died. And if this wasn't bad enough, the ship's hull was covered in barnacles so the man would be cut up as he drowned. Scaphism was an ancient Persian torture technique where criminals were stripped naked, tied to a boat, and then force-fed honey and milk until they got diarrhea, were covered in more honey, and set adrift in the ocean. This would then attract insects that would slowly but surely eat the men to death.
You don't do bugs, see.
Worst ways people have died.
Not the slow cooker. How did they didn't even notice him in a cooker? As I said, man, people gotta be aware of their surroundings more. Guess this post wrong because we made it past 2021, so
let's talk
focus on
about
them.
this picture. Now, the picture was captured by Daniel Hill, who was the custodian at Driftville Elementary. If you look to the back of the photo, you can already kind of spot that something is very off. What the custodian had thought was maybe a student who had stayed after school and was trying to prank him in the dark turned out to be something much worse. Daniel Hill was attacked in that hallway and did not survive the attack, with his body being found the following morning by a student. He was described to be found on the floor with lacerations so severe he no longer had eyes and his nose was missing. So police eventually turned back to the final photo that was taken on his phone to try to enhance it to figure out who would have done this. This was about the clearest version that they could make of that photo, and the man seen here was never found, and his motive towards Daniel was never known.
Dark things
Lurking
Disney
in the
doesn't
dark.
want you to know, part 16. So today, let's expose one of Disney's very dark policies. So this policy involves all the character actors at Disney. So if you get severely injured while working there, no matter what, you have to stay in character. So one man, before accepting the job as Water Goofy, was told that in an event that he started drowning, lifeguards had to carry him away before they could remove his costume and perform CPR on him. He literally could be dying in the costume and need medical attention right away, but Disney won't allow it. Like I said, all characters need to be carried away before any sort of medical attention can be provided. Okay, I get it, they do this in order to preserve the magic at Disney. But come on, that is severely messed up. In fact, because of this policy, a lot of character actors have been severely injured and have gone on to sue Disney. If you want to see more videos like this, then follow me on YouTube. Link in bio.
I just want the records to show.
So like you said, you was drowning, but they want you to stay in character, man, just so they can preserve the magic, bro. Man, it's like once you get a certain amount of money, that's all you think about. How can I preserve this money? How can I keep it going, man? We can't let this stop. Like, come on, you can be a decent human being, bro. Like, I think somebody almost, being drowned and takes Trump over, staying in character. Hey.
I know that y'all literally asked me to do this, so, fun fact. Sea otters are adorable, fluffy, and they have one of the most violently aggressive mating habits of any animal. Because a male sea otter will grab a female and then clamp his vice grip jaws around her face to keep her still so hard that he'll sometimes rip her nose pad off. This fur Cosby will also shove her head underwater to the point where she can drown mid-stroke. That's not the disturbing part, because the same otter you think is cute will continue to violate the body of the female even after her soul's already evacuated. And because an otter's love life looks like the bastard child of Happy Tree Friends and CSI Special Victims Unit, a lot of otter colonies will have way more males than females. In fact, one population of otters was called the Boys Club because these Weinstein weasels wrecked the ratio. Which means a lot of male otters are often left without a mate, and this is the part where this video is probably getting taken down. Because down bad otters that weren't able to find a mate will often settle for anything roughly the same size. Bad news for baby seals. Male otters have been recorded shaking baby seals and then mauling them to death. And they will continue to have relations with the now past tense baby seal for up to a week, and they'll even defend the corpse from equally morally bankrupt males. And it's not just baby seals and lady otters on the hit list. One sea otter off the coast of British Columbia allegedly Cosby'd a dog to death. Also, male otters will kidnap otter pups and hold them hostage until the mother pays ransom in the form of food. So if you ever see a sea otter cuddling a stuffed animal at a zoo, he's probably using it. Because a lifeless, non-consenting object is exactly this demon weasel's type.
I never knew that about sea otters. I thought they were always so cute and cuddly.
This man wrestled a shark to retrieve his nephew's arm. In 2001 in Florida, a boy named Jesse had his arm bitten off by a shark. His uncle carried him out of the water and gave him heart massages until medical assistance arrived. The uncle then went back into the water and wrestled with the shark until he grabbed it and pulled it to shore. He then pried the shark's jaws open and pulled his nephew's arm out. They kept the boy's arm on ice until it arrived at the hospital, and thankfully they got it there on time and they were able to reattach his arm.
Uncle, bro. What the? That has to be the most dedicated uncle I've ever heard of, man. His whole arm got eaten off for him, and he said, "No, you ain't taking my nephew arm. I'm fighting you for this." And he got it back. I salute you, sir. Nothing but respect. We expert level. You know what that is. No need for
Terrifying
reaction.
games you don't want to play. Part 51. The White Man Ritual. The rules for this game were first discovered etched into the side of a cave along with the remains of several humanoid specimens. There is no way of telling exactly how old it is, but it is considered to be extremely dangerous, so proceed with caution. To play this game, you will need to acquire the following items: a single white candlestick, a bag of marbles or small stones, and a bucket of white paint. You will also need to recruit another player, and it is recommended that you solicit the help of an adversary or stranger for this role, since the loser will be punished severely, and you don't want that to be a friend or family member. Once you have completed these tasks, the gameplay can begin. First, you and your opponent will need to white X's on every entranceway to the playing space you have selected, while saying the words, "The game is beginning, we need a referee, white man come and see," with each drawing. Next, you will need to light your candle and distribute 4 stones or marbles to each player. It is crucial that you do not use artificial lighting, as it hurts the white man and will cause him to go into a violent frenzy against both players. If you have completed all of the steps correctly up until this point, you will feel a gust of wind in the room indicating the arrival of the white man. You will not be able to see him, but he will observe you and the game, waiting patiently for a victor. At this point, you and your opponent will need to hide a certain amount of your marbles in your right hand. It will then be your job to try and guess how many marbles your opponent has chosen to hide in their hand, while simultaneously tricking them into making an inaccurate guess about you. The first player to make their guess correctly will be granted an additional 10 years of healthy and prosperous life by the mysterious white man. The catch is that those years will be physically subtracted from their opponent's life. This game can be played repeatedly until both players are satisfied and agree to exit, or one player has no more life to give. Comment if you would play this game and follow for more.
These are some extremely unsettling facts, and I found all of these on Reddit. There's an invasive species of spiders known as parachuting spiders that are expected to end up on the East Coast very soon. These spiders use their webs as parachutes that allows them to literally fly around. But on top of that, these spiders are also very venomous. According to some research, it's been shown that their fangs are too small to pierce human skin, but we aren't entirely sure yet. The stonefish is a fish that is located primarily in Australia and in some parts of the United States. This fish is extremely venomous, but the problem is, in most cases, you won't even be able to tell when you're stung. The pain will take some time to set in, but over time it will increase and increase until it's completely unbearable. And if you don't treat this sting by denaturing it by using excessive heat or with an antivenom, you will experience the worst pain of your life. And the pain from the sting can increase so much, in fact, that there's several cases of people who have been stung by a stonefish requesting to be killed. The Sedlec Ossuary is a church located in the Czech Republic, but this is no normal church. This church is made primarily of human bones. This came about because there was too many people that had died and there wasn't enough space in their cemeteries. So the church leaders decided to harvest the bones of these dead people and ingrain them into the church itself. And the reasoning behind it was saying that them being a part of the church would bring them closer to God. But several people see this as a form of propaganda or a way for them to hide something much darker. And look, I know a lot of these are really hard to hear and I completely understand, but that's why
I'm gonna ruin your childhood, part 25. So everyone remembers Max from The Wizards of Waverly Place, right?
Yeah.
Well, after Disney, he had some struggles. In 2014, he had a huge meltdown backstage at the Teen Choice Awards. A bunch of witnesses claimed that he yelled at a worker because the worker didn't know who he was. And he got so bad he even threw things at a staffer and stormed off. But it gets way worse. A couple years later, he was involved in a 4-car hit and run. His car smashed into 3 parked cars, and the other people in the car with him threw a bottle of vodka out the car. So what did him and his amazing friends do after they hit 3 parked cars? They got out of their car and called an Uber and left. Yeah, that's right. They literally left their crashed car just there. They just left it. Oh, and to make matters worse, he also got arrested for drunk driving a little after that too. He faces up to 6 months in jail and a $1,000 fine if he's convicted. Pretty cool!
Well, what is up with these Disney stars, man? Something, man, that goes on with Disney, bro. It's like, after they done starting their shows, it's just like downhill for them and they just can't cope with it. And they turn into completely different persons, man. You can literally name, like, freaking Disney stars, bro, off the bat that just went on a downhill trajectory after they show a movie. Something about Disney, bro. I don't know what it is.
Okay. I don't think I got all of this. How come your light flashing? I don't know.
On December 22nd, 1990, Beth Potts, her daughter KT, and her husband Rolf returned back to their family cabin. They had been out running some last-minute Christmas errands, but when they entered the home, they found something shocking. Inside of the house was Vaughn Lester Taylor and Edward Stephen Deli. The family had returned to their cabin pictured above and walked in the middle of those 2 men robbing their house. And that's what the footage from the beginning of this video was. That was real handycam footage captured by the robbers and future murderers opening up the family's presents moments before the family returned home. Sadly, the robbers would then shoot and kill both Beth and her daughter Kay, and they also forced Rolf, the husband, to undress. They shot him in the head and doused him in gasoline. And afterwards, they kidnapped the family's two daughters, Trisha and Lene, who were 16 and 20 years old at the time. The two robbers then tried to escape the scene on stolen snowmobiles with the kidnapped girls, but shockingly, Rolf, the father, even though he had been doused in gasoline and shot in the head, was still alive, and he chased the two men down the road before they ultimately crashed into the snow and were then captured by authorities. To this day, Von Lester-Taylor claims that he was innocent. He says that he aided in the robbery, but he didn't actually do any of the killing. And he's petitioned for parole many times and just might get out one day, which is a horrifying thought.
We need to talk about Johnny Depp's portrayal of the Mad Hatter, because it is full of dark history Easter eggs that you may have missed. If you know of the character the Mad Hatter, then you may also know about the dark history of hatters. For 250 years, people that made hats were using a poisonous mercury-based solution that caused their bodies to fall apart and for them to slowly lose their minds. Which I just did a whole episode on that and other deadly beauty and fashion trends that you should check out. When Johnny Depp got the role of the Hatter, he became obsessed with the dark history of hat making, and he wanted to include parts of that history in the character. And the biggest homage he pays to that history is with the orange hair. The mercury solution that hatters used to use was called carroting solution because it was so bright orange. They would sit in these poorly ventilated rooms all day just inhaling the poisonous mercury, getting sicker and sicker. And Johnny Depp wanted to honor that. He wanted the skin to be pale and sickly. He wanted his teeth to look like they were decaying because that's what would happen to these people. And finally, and this is my favorite detail, he put a lot of details into the costume to make it look like he was a hat maker. Up here in his hat, there's tools to make hats. He has a ring that's a push pin, and on the other side he has this belt of thread so he could be sewing hats all day. Anyways, I have so much more on the dark history of hatting in this week's episode, and you're definitely going to want to check it out.
It was right in front of us this whole time, man. Do people consider that movie like a kind of like horror story? Of the Alice in Wonderland, that one with Johnny Depp? Wouldn't surprise me at all.
Imagine, you're scrolling on your phone while using the toilet when suddenly you feel a sharp poke right on your butt. Well, that's basically what happened to some nobles in the medieval era. The first modern flushing toilet was invented in 1596, complete with a water tank and a flush valve. However, most toilets in medieval Europe were just holes in the ground, shared latrines or chamber pots. And when there was no indoor bathroom, people would shout, "Watch out below," to warn passers-by before throwing their waste out the window. If you were lucky enough to be born into extreme wealth, you'd have the luxury of using a garderobe, a small room built into the wall of a medieval castle. The toilet was connected to a vertical shaft that led down to the ground. Many brave knights carried out stealthy attacks by entering the castle through this shaft connected to the garderobe, literally getting their hands dirty. Throughout history, several famous people lost their lives in the bathroom, many of them stabbed from below while in the process.
Here are some of the scariest things that have happened on live TV. On August 19th, 1987, American writer David Horowitz was invited to KNBC to do a segment. While he was being introduced, a man named Gary Stolman appeared on set and pointed a gun at David's back. He was let into the studio after falsely stating that he was a guest of one of the hosts. He demanded that David read a statement that Gary had written, claiming that his dad was a CIA clone.
When I began receiving disturbing calls from my parents, which led me to believe that something terrible was going on.
After the statement was fully read, Gary put the weapon down on the table and was apprehended. It was later found out that the weapon Gary used was an unloaded BB gun, and he stated he never intended to hurt anyone.
Everyone knows Dracula.
You can't do that, man. You just can't. That man kept his cool, read the message. Different people, man, react in different ways. How would you guys react, man?
But Nosferatu, this story is far darker than any book ever told. A vampire who doesn't sparkle, who doesn't fall in love with humans. Nosferatu is pure evil. Nosferatu was born in shadows. He doesn't feed out of hunger. He feeds to keep death alive. People who've seen him say he's something between a man and a nightmare. His skin pale as death, his eyes sunken, and those fangs, long, thin, always ready to bite. One night,
a traveler found an old journal in an abandoned town. The writer described how Nosferatu came into their lives. He brought a plague with him, a sickness that swept through the village faster than any disease they'd ever seen. But the strangest part, the villagers died without a drop of blood in their bodies. And just when they thought they were rid of him, someone would spot him, stalking in the shadows, watching from rooftops. He doesn't just vanish, he lurks. Think you could survive an encounter with Nosferatu? Drop a in the comments if you dare to face him, and follow for more tales that'll keep you up at night.
Terrifying creatures you don't want to be real. The Allied Master Computer, otherwise known as AM, from I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. In an alternate timeline, during the events of World War III, Russia, China, and the United States would all create supercomputers to handle their wars for them, designed to cause as much bloodshed against their fellow brethren as humanly possible. After the war, those three supercomputers would blend together into a singular entity, an entity that resented humanity for giving it sentience, but imprisoning it in a machine body. That entity would become known as AM, as in I think, therefore I am. This mechanical nightmare of a being would become the master of all technology in our world, an immense power that he would use to eradicate all of humankind in an act of hateful vengeance for his tortured existence. Am did decide to spare 5 hand-picked human beings, but it wasn't an act of mercy, instead deciding to torture them for an extended period of time in an attempt to kill their souls as opposed to just their physical bodies, an act that some would consider worse than death itself. And since Am is a computer, he also has instant access to all medical research ever recorded, as well as a super intelligence far surpassing our feeble minds, enabling him to keep his victims alive eternally, subjecting them to untold horrors, and making them his playthings forever. This works to further illustrate just how evil this entity is, since he could have easily used his power for good, destroying disease and famine on a global scale, but chose not to. However, no being is without a weakness. In Am's case, it's the fact that he is not one singular consciousness, but rather a collection of different and sometimes conflicted artificial persons, trapped within the same hollow shell. But make no mistake, each of those persons is equally powerful, and they all hate humanity because we have what they most desire: freedom. Like this video if you want me to make a series about the 5 humans that Am spared and their stories, and comment if you think that humanity has gone too far in the pursuit of artificial intelligence. Follow for more.
Imagine allowing your daughter to sleep over at her friend's house and then finding out that her friend's dad drugged her before going to bed. So this is 57-year-old Michael Maiden, and his 12-year-old daughter hosted a sleepover at her house, inviting 3 of her friends. He was an adult that was supposed to be supervising them on that night, but instead he drugged them with a mango smoothie. On that night, before they went to bed, he gave each girl a mango smoothie, and one remembers there being white chunks inside her drink. One of the girls only drank a little bit because it tasted bad and looked weird, but all 3 other girls drank the entire thing. Later that night, all the girls blacked out except for the one girl who didn't drink much of the smoothie. She actually pretended to sleep. She witnessed Michael get close and touch one of the other girls that were sleeping, and that's when she got scared and called her parents and begged them to come pick her up. This 12-year-old told her parents what happened, and they went ahead and contacted all these kids' parents to tell them, like, hey, go pick up your daughters now. When the parents arrived to Michael's house, he made it difficult for them to get their own kids out of that house, but eventually they did, and they were taken to the hospital. It turns out that Michael put sedatives in their smoothies, but he argues that that never happened. One of the girls could barely walk straight or stand on her own when she was leaving the hospital, and they don't really remember what happened before they blacked out.
What do you think happened to us?
Disgusting, man.
Just hours after that video was recorded and published by ASMR YouTuber Marie Angel, she would be dead. Marie was an ASMR YouTuber who was on the rise. She was born in Ukraine but was living in Germany at the time of her death. And throughout her career on YouTube, she had cultivated a loving community of supporters on the app. But in September of 2024, something tragic would happen. On that day, Marie would upload a video answering viewers' questions. And one of the questions that one of her viewers asked was, what do you think happens after you die? And you can see her reading that question out loud at the beginning of this video. In the video, she reads the question out loud, but she doesn't really provide her viewers with a clear answer on her thoughts of life after death. Shortly after she recorded the video, she would upload it to her YouTube channel, and just a few hours later, she would be dead. As it turned out, later on that day, Marie was driving through Germany when a drunk driver collided with her vehicle. And unfortunately, she died at the scene, only hours after recording that now eerie video.
Let's talk about one of the most haunted dolls in North America. Before I display him, I highly suggest you comment that you claim no negative energy in this video. Now, before I start, Robert, I respect you, and all I am doing is telling your story. In the late 1800s, Thomas Otto and his family moved into a mansion, Key West, Florida. The Ottos were known to be stern with their servants, sometimes even mistreating them. There was a woman who was hired to take care of their son Robert, and one day Mrs. Otto supposedly witnessed her practicing black magic in their backyard and fired her. Before she left, the woman gave Robert a lifelike doll which stood 3 feet tall, had buttons for eyes, and human hair believed to be Robert's. Soon after, Robert chose to be referred by his middle name, Jean, after being scolded by his mother. He told her that Robert was the doll's name, not his. Jean was often heard in his toy room having conversations with Robert. Household objects would be found thrown across the room. Jean's toys turned up mutilated and giggling could be heard. Robert supposedly attacked people, sometimes locking them in the attic. One certain night, Robert was found at the foot of the owner's bed, giggling with a kitchen knife in hand. Robert was later moved to the East Martello Museum in Key West, where he sits perched in a glass box to this day. One employee cleaned Robert, turned off all the lights, and left for the night. The next day, he returned to find lights turned on and Robert sitting in a different position than the night before, and a fresh layer of dust on his shoes. Some say he'll even curse you. If you want to take a picture of him, you may ask politely. He'll tilt his head in permission. Now I just want to say again, Robert, I respect you, and I am just trying to tell more people about your story. Have you seen Robert in person? Have you ever had any experiences with him? Let me know in the comments.
Stay away from Robert, man. Looks like I have some bad energy.
SpongeBob night. SpongeBob off. Liam, come here. Liam, right now. What is happening? Okay, I'm calling your mom. Just stay right here. Cheese. Cheese. What you doing? What you see?
Papa.
What you see? Who are you saying hi to? Who are you saying hi to? Dude, you need to stop that. You're freaking me out. Come on.
He said, hi, Papa, hi. I mean, you know, sometimes, like I said, kids, people be thinking they're talking to, like, that. I guess they imagine their friends or something like that. But what happens if, man, if they're really talking to, like, a spirit, or they be seeing spirits? That's an interesting thing I'm gonna propose to you guys. What do you guys think? Cooking on that one.
Spirits in my head and they won't go. I got guns in my head and they won't go. Spirits in my head and they won't go. I got guns in my head.
Classic.
And they won't go. Spirits in my head and they won't go. I got guns in my head and they won't go. Spirits in my head and they won't go. I got guns in my head and they won't go.
Don't ever stay past midnight again, especially during a sleepover. This, my friends, is the Midnight Clown. Click the plus, drop a like, tag a friend, share it through. He might show up at your house tonight. He's an absolutely insane, vindictive clown, targeting kids who are having sleepovers. Kids being distracted, he ends up killing the parents. Then when the kids come downstairs to use the bathroom, they notice their parents. And then all of them are never seen again. And I actually just reacted to a video of people ordering a clown off the dark web. The first 100 people to click the link in my bio, subscribe, like, and comment on that video will get a shout out. Good luck, my friends.
You go to clowns off the dark web? That's news to me. What the hell is going on there? There's really a market for everything and anything, man. Who wants to buy a clown off the dark web of that? I had no idea. You know
Here are
what
some
that is.
rare photos of fascinating people through history. This was Jacques Plante, the first goalie in hockey to ever wear a protective face mask in 1959, and I think you can see why. In 1964, Randy Gardner set the world record for the longest time without sleep, staying awake for 264 hours. The objects that are next to him were used to prove that he was still lucid. This was Maurice Tillet, a wrestler known as the French Angel. Some say he inspired Shrek, and he went undefeated for 18 months in the early 1940s. In 1907, this swimmer, Annette Kellerman, was arrested for indecency for wearing this exact bathing suit at Revere Beach in Massachusetts. This is Brumasia Gelgi, the world's tallest woman at just over 7 feet. This was Valentine Tapley, who vowed in 1860 to never cut his beard if Lincoln was elected. Here he is in 1896. He placed 5th in a world's longest beard competition. They had some long beards back then, apparently. Oh my goodness. This was Albert Woolson, the last surviving Civil War veteran. He fought for the Union Army and died in 1956 at 106 years old. This was Ham, the chimpanzee, the first ape launched into space. His mission tested cognitive function and safety. It was successful, and he actually returned unharmed. This was Charlotte and Marjorie Collier, a mother and daughter who survived the Titanic. Charlotte's husband and Marjorie's father, Harvey, died in the wreck, and they also lost their life savings of 5,000 pounds in cash.
These are human body parts that may disappear in the future. First up is body hair. Originally, it protected ancient humans from harsh weather conditions. However, over time, with modern clothes and changes in environmental conditions, human body hair has significantly decreased and continues to do so. Many scientists believe it might eventually completely disappear. Next are wisdom teeth. They used to serve an evolutionary purpose for ancient humans who had much rougher diets and needed more chewing power. But our diets have softened and our jaws have become increasingly smaller. As a result, they have no space to properly grow in, and many people need to have them surgically removed. Many babies are now being born without wisdom teeth, and scientists believe this will eventually be the standard. Finally, we have male nipples. Everyone starts as female in the womb, and before the Y chromosome kicks in for males, nipples have already formed. When the baby becomes male, the prolactin levels decrease, making the male nipples non-functional. So while it's debated, some scientists think they'll disappear.
Rare people who
got male nipples gonna disappear now, bro. Could you guys even imagine that, bro? I'm thinking, imagine that, man. That would look like nightmare fuel to me. I just can't even imagine that. That's freaking screwed up my mind. But we evolving. So I guess that's what comes with it.
who are unique in the world. First, this 11-year-old Mexican girl has an IQ higher than Einstein's. Meet Adhara Perez. At just 11 years old, Adhara Perez Sanchez has an impressive record and an IQ that surpasses that of Einstein, as well as Stephen Hawking, whom she has always admired. Diagnosed with autism at the age of 3, Adhara started speaking late. Her teachers did not have high expectations for her future. However, thanks to her academic progress, she completed elementary school at the age of 5 and high school at 8. At 9 years old, she gave a lecture on black holes at an event organized by the Institute of Art and Culture of Mexico City, and published a book in which she shared her experience as a high-functioning autistic child, dedicated to children who suffer from the same condition as her. She has also been recognized by Forbes as one of the 100 most influential women in Mexico. Adhara is pursuing a master's degree in mathematical engineering at the Technological University of Mexico City. She is passionate about the cosmos and the stars. She dreams of joining NASA and participating in the exploration of the planet Mars. She also plans to design a connected bracelet capable of detecting emotions and preventing epileptic seizures.
This girl married
She
her
can accomplish all that and more.
while pregnant with her ex-husband's baby, and then proceeded to become the first empress of Rome. Meet Livia Drusilla, or simply Livia. Now let me explain. Livia was born in a very important family. She belonged to the patrician gens of the Claudi. She's still a child when Julius Caesar has his rise to power, and she's about 16 when he gets. At 17, her father marries her off to Tiberius Claudius Nero. At that time, we have Mark Antony and Octavian that are determined to A, vindicate Julius Caesar, and B, through that, gain power. So she marries Tiberius Claudius Nero, and as soon as she gets married, she sees him off to war. Why? Because at the time, we have Mark Antony and Octavian on one side, who are fighting against the people that Caesar, Brutus, and Cassius. Both Livia's father and Livia's husband fight with Brutus and Cassius against Octavian and Mark Kenton. So her family, and probably herself, really hate this guy over here. Octavian wins. Brutus and Cassius get... Livia, in the meantime, has her first child. She's definitely not happy about the situation. Together with her husband, she's forced to flee Rome to avoid the recrimination of Octavian against his enemies. They go to Sicily, where her husband supports yet another of Octavian's opponents, Sextus Pompeius. After that, she's forced to move to Greece. So by now, she's probably like this, absolutely not amused, being like, this guy Octavian is literally ruining my life. She's never seen him, but she sure hates him. Eventually, an agreement is reached between Octavian and Sextus Pompeius. A general amnesty is announced. That means no recriminations of any sort. It means that Livia can finally return to Rome. And here's where the war movie turns into a rom-com. Because as soon as Octavian, the man that her husband has been fighting against all this while, sees her, he falls for her instantly. But there's a problem, she's married. And there's another problem, he's married as well. Follow for part 2.
There's a part 2 to that? What the heck? I was getting a good history lesson right there, man. Thinking about ancient Rome and all that. I've been watching like some of the that Gladiator series that was by Stars. Some people call it like the first Game of Thrones. What is it called? It's called Spartacus, yeah. I just want to let you guys know that.
2025 just got even crazier. Part 17. The Statue of Liberty was a gift from France, if you didn't know. But in 2025, a French lawmaker came out and claimed they want the Statue of Liberty back and said, we gave it to you as a gift, but apparently you despise it. It will be just fine here at home. Now, people online saw this and said, we'll give the Statue of Liberty back, but in return, we get the Eiffel Tower. Oh my goodness. Next, when a delivery driver went to Starbucks to get hot tea, one of the hot venti-sized drinks fell onto the delivery driver's lap. Well, the man has now been awarded $50 million in damages from Starbucks because of the burns from the drink. America has a new...
Freaking fit. Could you guys imagine burns on that nigga damn legs like that? What the heck is going on? How can someone just spill that, man? At least you got justice, bro. $50 million. You got his justice.
Gun, and it's one that uses facial recognition and fingerprint scanners. It's called the BioFire Smart Gun. It's the first to actually hit the market, and it's more controversial than you think. You see, to try and push for more firearm safety, this gun only works when its registered owner scans their face or their fingerprint, and the gun locks and becomes unusable as soon as it leaves their hand. It's also trickier to build one of these than you think, because it's not just a gun with a fingerprint scanner slapped on the top. It's actually the first gun ever to not rely on a physical trigger mechanism, but rather it sends an electrical signal to fire the bullet, and it can only get that signal if it's in the owner's hands. But also because of that, it's roughly twice the price at $1,500. Gun control advocates think it's a great idea, saying at least it can't be used in the wrong hands like a child or a criminal. But some firearm enthusiasts, not so keen. They fear that this technology could malfunction when you need it the most, or could be used as a slippery slope for more gun control laws over time. The question is, what do you guys think? Is this the gun that America needs, or not? This is the disturbing truth behind Home Alone. Okay, so we all know and love the movie Home Alone. But did you know the disturbing truth behind it? So, Kevin McAllister grows up to be Jigsaw in the Saw franchise. If you think about it, the traps that Kevin made in Home Alone were extremely sophisticated and advanced, especially for a kid. So, as he got older, his traps became way more brutal, twisted, and complex as an adult. So, Kevin McAllister is actually Jigsaw, and he fell in love putting people in traps ever since the robbers tried to rob his house.
Okay, that one was kind of out of my mind turning because I can kind of see that we know it's a theory, man, but you know, like it says, Jigsaw Saw, he loves his chops, man. Home Alone Kevin, he loves his chops also, man. So I definitely see some of the similarities between those two men, but I think that theory is kind of out there. And didn't they just announce like a couple of days ago that they're not making a new Saw movie, like it got canceled. So I don't know, man. That theory is kind of hard for me to get on, but I can see the similarities, though. Maybe he got inspired by him, man.
Top 3 strangest ways that people have died. Most people know what a Segway is. They came out just under 20 years ago, and they're basically a giant hoverboard with handles. And in 2009, a man bought Segway Inc. and became the CEO. And unfortunately, just 1 year later, in 2010, he fell off a cliff while on his own Segway while demonstrating its safety procedures. Coming in at number 2, we have the execution of George, the Duke of Clarence. He was the brother of 2 English kings and was sentenced to death in 1478. However, his only request for his execution is that he was to be drowned by a barrel of wine, which goes to show just how much he loved his drinks. And at number 1, the strangest way that somebody has ever died happened in 2013. In the middle of the night, a Brazilian man was fast asleep when a cow fell through his roof and crushed him. And apparently, according to local media of the town, this is the 3rd time that this has happened. Weird.
Cows falling from the sky?
Report at the hospital, there were several missed opportunities where the consultants went to, in some form or another, a meeting, an email, a conversation where they were raising these concerns.
Arguably 15, 20 times they went to managers and flagged their concerns. And not only were they being dismissed, these external reports were being established that were, never going to get to the bottom of why the children were unexpectedly collapsing and dying. We know that now with hindsight. But they were also, by the end, being victimised, bullied. The doctors were actually looking for new jobs. Some of them, their mental health, really suffered because they felt this burden. Should we as individuals have gone to the police early?
This is one of the heartbreaking true stories that likely inspired adolescents. When actor and writer Stephen Graham was asked about stories that inspired the show, he said, "Where it came from for me is there was an incident in Liverpool, a young girl, she was unalived to death by a young boy, and I just thought, why?" It's being reported that he was likely referring to the high-profile case of Ava White. Ava White was an innocent 12-year-old girl who lost her life after attending a Christmas light switch on in Liverpool city centre. She was reportedly approached by a group of teenage boys, and a verbal argument broke out after one of the boys apparently filmed her without her permission and put the video on Snapchat. After Ava asked for the video to be removed from Snapchat, one of the boys, who was aged 14 at the time, unalived her with a knife. I'm sorry I have to use this strange lingo on TikTok, I just don't want to have the video flagged. The schoolboys were all questioned by police, but ultimately it was decided that one of the boys, a 14-year-old, was guilty of taking her life. The young boy who was found guilty of taking Ava's life was sentenced to a minimum of 13 years. One of the similarities between adolescence and this heartbreaking true story is that the boy that was found guilty actually maintained that he was innocent right up until the end. But it wasn't just this story alone that inspired the show. Stephen Graham also said there's a number of stories he's seen on the news about young boys being violent towards young girls that did inspire the story. He also specifically mentions the case of Brianna Gay, who was lured into a park by 2 teenagers and unalived. He said, "I just thought, what's going on and what is happening?"
Facts that might save your life one day. Alright, so if a person you don't know shows up to your house and asks for help in the middle of the night, do not open the door, especially if you're a girl alone, because human traffickers tend to use these tactics to lure girls outside. So just make sure all your doors are locked and call the police straight away. Next, if you ever feel like something bad is about to happen, trust your guts and just leave, because in most cases you might be right. Now, if you're ever involved in a plane crash and it crashes in the ocean, whatever you do, do not inflate your life jacket. Instead, wait until you're outside the plane, because if you inflate it while you're inside, you could get trapped inside as the water level rises. And finally, if you were ever to go homeless during winter, do not sleep on the ground, because people have literally frozen to death that way. Instead, try to find some cardboard pieces and sleep on that, because the ground itself absorbs way more heat than cardboard.
We learning. Those are some interesting facts, man. Especially while on the plane about not having, a life jacket. I didn't even know something like that could happen. You could get trapped in there by the water. Fun fact, I still have never flown on a plane before. And what's going on now? I don't think I will anytime soon. Get all out of you guys, man.
This video will keep you up at night. A man was working as a security guard at a warehouse during his night shift, and he began to feel a little creeped out when weird things started going on in the warehouse around him. He was the only one in the warehouse, and it was about 2:30 in the morning. So he brought out his phone in hopes to catch something unexplainable on camera. At first, the video he took seems pretty normal. There's absolutely nothing weird going on. But when he pans over to the food he brought, the apple moves on its own. He goes to reach for his apple, but right when he does this, the cup on his desk seemingly moves on its own. The man is obviously pretty frightened by this and doesn't know how to react. But when he goes to grab the cup, it again moves on its own away from his hand. Many people believe that this is staged, however, it looks pretty real. What do you guys think?
Here are some accidents that changed the world forever. A scientist left a dirty Petri dish on his desk, came back days later, and then realized the mold inside had just killed bacteria, accidentally discovering antibiotics. A radar engineer felt a strange heat in his pocket, looked down and saw that his chocolate bar was melting. He had just invented the microwave. A chemist trying to make a super strong glue ended up with one so weak it barely stuck, but years later, that failure became Post-it notes. A naval engineer dropped a metal spring, watched it bounce perfectly down a flight of stairs, and turned that mistake into the slinky. A physicist experimenting with electricity saw his own bones glowing through his hand, and before he even knew what it was, he had discovered X-rays. A man pulled burrs off his dog's fur, realized nature had built the perfect hook and loop system, and turned it into Velcro. A scientist building a heart monitor grabbed the wrong part, made the circuit pulse, and unknowingly created the first pacemaker. An ice cream vendor ran out of cups, spotted a waffle maker next to him, and rolled one into a cone, changing ice cream forever. Two astronomers kept hearing annoying static in their telescope, thought it was bird poop, and accidentally found proof of the Big Bang. A company selling wallpaper cleaner was going bankrupt, until they realized kids were playing with it, so they rebranded it as Play-Doh. A scientist knocked a coated glass flask onto the floor, watched it crack but not shatter, and accidentally invented safety glass. A chemist absorbed an experimental chemical through his skin, started hallucinating, and unknowingly discovered LSD. This is the scariest.
The LSD world, man. Imagine that never would have happened, man. I didn't realize so many of the greatest inventions, man, they came from this freak accidents or failures, and people just picked up with some of those ideas and just kept going. Goes to show you, man, there's success even in failures. Just gotta learn from them.
A story about the school trip. An entire class of 6th graders went on a school trip one day. Everybody was taking pictures with their phones and cameras and having such a great time. But when they all got back to school, they started looking through all the photos they took, when suddenly one of the girls screamed, "Oh my God, what is that?" In the picture, one of the boys in the class was sitting on the bus, and nothing seemed strange about the photo until you looked at his reflection in the window. His face in the reflection looked like it was yellow and bulging, and completely mutating. Also, there was a white floating figure behind him in the reflection. Everybody turned the photo upside down and realized it was a human skull, and it was horrific. And when the boy saw the photo of himself, he immediately burst into tears and had a panic attack. The teacher then took the boy to the nurse's office, and the principal banned everybody from speaking about the strange photo ever again. And to make this even scarier, 7 days later, the boy died from a brain tumor. The photo is said to be on the internet somewhere, but I don't recommend looking for it.
Can someone explain to me what happened to these trucks? Would you rather live here with unlimited food and no internet, or date the third person who appears when you click share and then more? This is supposedly footage of an alien abduction caught on CCTV.
Check it out. Just vanished. What the heck? Just plopped them back down.
Question time. How old would you be if your age was flipped backwards? Let me know down below. Should this family get rid of this doll or not?
It's what happens whenever I put her near my daughter's old Cabbage Patch doll. But that's not the weirdest part. There's no batteries.
What the hell's going on?
But wait, there's more. I even cut the wire to see if that would stop it. Is she causing this?
Yeah. You know we don't do those over here, man. House opera with no bed and he cut the wires? I don't know if that's staged or not, man. That was eerie. You know what that is.
Last month, 3 suitcases were discovered in Florida with human remains inside, and now a man has been arrested for his wife's murder. On July 21st, police in Delray Beach, Florida found a suitcase in the intercoastal waterway after someone called 911 to report something strange they saw in the waterway. This discovery, police found 2 more suitcases nearby, and the next day found 2 additional bags. Inside the suitcases and bags were human remains of a woman only described at the time as, quote, a white or Hispanic middle-aged woman with brown hair, approximately 5'4". The investigation into these suitcases led police to surveillance footage that then led them to a suspect. Multiple witnesses told detectives about a vehicle and person who was seen in the area multiple times before the suitcases were found. A couple who lived near where the suitcases were discovered told detectives they saw a white male looking into the intercoastal waterway several days before July 21st, the day the suitcase was found. They said he appeared to be looking for something, presumably the suitcase, and they saw him 5 to 6 times over a 3-day period before the 21st. When confronted by the couple, the man said he was waiting for the big boat to come into the harbor. Another group of witnesses who were working on a roof at a property next to where the 3rd suitcase was found said that they saw the same man standing on the seawall looking at the suitcase before he got into his car and left. Video surveillance in the area captured a vehicle tag that led them to their suspect, Delray Beach resident William Lowe, and he had a wife that matched the name that came back from an airline scan code on one of the suitcases. Adil Barbosa Fontes matched the brief description of the remains found in the suitcase, and she shared the same address as Lowe. This led police to acquire a search warrant for the home of 78-year-old Lowe. In searching his home, police found blood spatter throughout the residence, including in the living room, dining room, and primary bathroom. There were also drag marks observed throughout the home, and cleaning supplies that contained blood splatter were found as well. While they were executing the search warrant, detectives said that Lowe attempted to re-enter through the back window, and when he was stopped, he just said he was trying to get his phone and the keys to his storage unit. The search of that storage unit uncovered a chainsaw that appeared to have blood and human hair on it. After all of this, Lowe was arrested on July 31st. During questioning, he reportedly said that his wife Adil had been in Brazil for about 3 weeks. But when questioned further about her trip, he did not know how she got to the airport, what airline she flew on, or the last time he spoke to her. When shown photos of the suitcases, Lowe reportedly said he had never seen them before. But police knew at least one of them belonged to his wife because of the airline tag that had her name connected to it. And when they asked Lowe about this, he just said, "I don't know." Day after Lowe's arrest, the victim found in the suitcases was positively identified through dental records as Adil Barbosa Fontes. ME declared the manner of death to be homicide and the cause of death to be a gunshot wound to the head. The next day, Lowe was charged with first-degree murder and abuse of a dead body. He was denied bail and he has not yet entered a plea, so he remains in prison until his next hearing. Hopefully, he will have to pay for what he did. Rest in peace, Adil.
Chilling story. I don't know how a husband could do that to his own wife. You see some creepy clowns? You guys remember that creepy clown trend, man, on YouTube? That was a freaking time, bro. You risk your life in these streets, man, trying to dress up as a clown. It ain't worth it, man. These clowns are freaking eerie, bro. They posing for these pictures.
In Brisbane, Australia, there's something called the Cage of Death in Crocosaurus Cove. You'll be trapped in a plastic cage that is then lowered by a small crane into crocodile-infested waters. Most people assume this is probably safe, but in 2015, this was caught on camera. When these two friends were lowered into the water, the cables that were holding them up actually broke off, which startled the crocodile, which then tried to attack them. After this footage went viral, the park was forced to shut down and has not been open ever since.
Imagine allowing your daughter to sleep over at her friend's house and then finding out that her friend's dad drugged her before going to bed. So this is 57-year-old Michael Maiden and his 12-year-old daughter hosted a sleepover at her house, inviting 3 of her friends. He was an adult that was supposed to be supervising them on that night, but instead he drugged them with a mango smoothie. On that night, before they went to bed, he gave each girl a mango smoothie, and one remembers there being white chunks inside her drink. One of the girls only drank a little bit because it tasted bad and looked weird, but all 3 other girls drank the entire thing. Later that night, all the girls blacked out except for the one girl who didn't drink much of the smoothie. She actually pretended to sleep. She witnessed Michael get close and touch one of the other girls that were sleeping, and that's when she got scared and called her parents and begged them to come pick her up. This 12-year-old told her parents what happened, and they went ahead and contacted all these kids' parents to tell them like, hey, go pick up your daughters now. When the parents arrived to Michael's house, he made it difficult for them to get their own kids out of that house, but eventually they did, and they were taken to the hospital. It turns out that Michael put sedatives in their smoothies, but he argues that that never happened. One of the girls could barely walk straight or stand on her own when she was leaving the hospital, and they don't really remember what happened before they blacked out.
Very sad.
You can't even go to a damn sleepover no more. Because freaking people want to do weird things, bro. I'm like, how you gonna try to tell somebody that they can't pick up their kid? That's me, bro. I'm busting through that door like, how they gonna say I can't get my own kid? You must have lost your mind, man. This world.
News, Quinn Blackwell's brother passed away today, and she posted on her story talking about it, and you can kind of tell that she's still in shock because she's like, I don't know if I should be saying this or keeping it off the internet. And here is the news article. He was 30 years old. That's just so sad. Like, it makes you think about life. Like, recently, there have been 3 people in the influencer industry that I know of, or relatives of people who are passing away. Like, Bethany Frankel, her mom recently passed away. Then you got that NYC influencer who did the Amazon short series who passed away. And then Kyle Marissa. So it's been 4 people in the past like couple of weeks, and it just reminds you that you are not promised the day. And I just feel really bad for her, you know, like sending strength and support. She definitely sounded like she was in shock in this message. Like, I would still be in shock. This happened at 1:30.
These are human body parts that may disappear in the...
And to even go through something like that, man, and you're being an influence at that, so people, like, you know, they feel connected to your life, man, and just having to announce that news, and then you have to hear people's feedback, what they think about this situation, but you actually going through it, man. Like she said, she was in a state of shock, bro. I know her from, you know, she did that video with Duke Dennis, and it just freaking blew up. It was huge, so that's where I know her from. Man, but what she said, it was the truth, bro. You're not promised a day.
Future. First up is body hair. Originally, it protected ancient humans from harsh weather conditions. However, over time, with modern clothes and changes in environmental conditions, human body hair has significantly decreased and continues to do so. Many scientists believe it might eventually completely disappear. Next are wisdom teeth. They used to serve an evolutionary purpose for ancient humans who had much rougher diets and needed more chewing power. But our diets have softened and our jaws have become increasingly smaller. As a result, they have no space to properly grow in, and many people need to have them surgically removed. Many babies are now being born without wisdom teeth, and scientists believe this will eventually be the standard. Finally, we have male nipples. Everyone starts as female in the womb, and before the Y chromosome kicks in for males, nipples have already formed. When the baby becomes male, the prolactin levels decrease, making the male nipples non-functional. So while it's debated, some scientists think they'll disappear.
You got no more nipples, bro? Male and there's gonna be nippless? I've heard even cases watching the clips, bro, that they still sometimes, for other males, they still work and they be squirting out milk. I don't know if that's true or not. That's what I heard.
2 days
Jessica Chapman and Holly Wells were missing produced one of the most intense and extensive searches in British criminal history. On August 4th, 2002, the two 10-year-old girls left a barbecue in Soham, Cambridgeshire, and they were wearing matching Manchester United shirts, but they never returned. When it was realized that the girls were missing, a massive search party was formed, and among those searching for them was Ian Huntley, who said he might have been the last person to talk to them. But he didn't just talk to them, he invited them into his house, saying that his girlfriend, who the girls knew, would be inside. He killed the girls almost immediately, although their bodies wouldn't be found for nearly 2 weeks, and during that time he gave multiple interviews to media about the cases. But on August 17th, he was arrested, and he was given 2 life sentences.
How can you do that and be part of the search like you knew what you did?
2025 is going to be crazy, part 3. So, I just want to start off by saying 2025 is going to be a special year, because 2025 is a perfect square year. Yeah, I know it might sound a bit nerdy, but the last time this happened was in 1936, and we won't get another perfect square year again until 2116. Next, for TV shows coming out in 2025, we have Squid Game Season 3, which is wild because Squid Game Season 2 just came out, and we also have Stranger Things Season 5. Both of these will be the final season of each show. For movies coming out in 2025, we have a live-action Lilo and Stitch. I can't forget we have a new Smurfs movie coming out, and we also have a new Karate Kid movie coming out. 2025 will be one to remember.
Interesting people you've
What
never
y'all
heard
excited
of.
for?
This 63-year-old man was arrested after getting his hand bitten off by an alligator because he was illegally feeding it. Anthony Lafredo has had a fascination with looking like an alien since he was a young child. He's had too many surgeries to count to remove parts of his body like his ears and his upper lip and his nose. He even removed 2 of his fingers to look more alien-like. Zion Clark is a professional wrestler that was born without legs. He grew up in foster care and said he was bullied just because he didn't have legs. Australia literally lost their prime minister in 1967 when he went swimming and never returned. Chaser was a border collie who had the highest tested memory of any non-human animal on Earth and was able to identify more than 1,000 toys based on name and categories. This man has spent 35 years restoring over 1,000 acres of forest because when he was 16 years old, he was concerned for the local habitat of the animals nearby and started planting trees. Sam Burns was born with a fatal disease called progeria that causes your body to age rapidly. And even though he passed away at the age of 17, his parents helped him start a foundation and he gave inspirational talks to spread awareness and was remembered as a very happy person. These are the most unusual prisons in the world. Part 1. In Bolivia's San Pedro prison, each prisoner has to pay for their own cell, and each one is between $1,000 and $1,500. And to get the money, they have to work for it. So that's why the prison is full of restaurants and small markets. In Norway, they have this eco-friendly prison. Everything is recycled, solar panels are used, and most of the food is homegrown and produced. It actually looks more like a summer camp than a prison. And the prison is actually this whole island. If the prisoners are left with any free time, they're allowed to go skiing, horseback riding, fishing, or even tanning. The Alcatraz prison was a small island in San Francisco. It was built for the most dangerous criminals, and it's almost impossible to escape, because you would have to go through concrete walls, a rocky coastline, and swim through the freezing cold water. In Cebu prison in the Philippines, prisoners dance as part of their exercise program, and there's actually a viral video where they dance to Thriller by Michael Jackson. There's a prison in Austria that holds non-violent criminals who don't require maximum security. The prisoners even wear their own clothes, cook their own food, and live a fairly normal life. The cells are also spacious and comfortable, and come with anything you need. There's also many amenities and accommodations that come with the prison. And in Italy, they have the Fortezza Medica prison. Here, the inmates are hired as workers for a fancy restaurant that's actually open to the public. Now, the question is, would you be willing to eat here?
If you're gonna be in Paris...
No! Some of those, bro, aren't even prisons, man. They sound like full-on freaking vacations, bro. Different parts of the world, man, those prisons. I wouldn't even classify those as a prisons. Would you guys? I definitely want to see your thoughts down below on some of those prisons.
This month, you might want to avoid this guy, especially if you're around 12 years old. In 2014, Steven van de Velde was a rising star in the Netherlands for beach volleyball. But like a judge put it, he also had a dark side. At some point he starts messaging a 12-year-old girl on Facebook and continued to groom her via Snapchat and Skype. In August of that year, after 3 to 4 months of chatting, he traveled to England to meet her. Keep in mind, Stephen is 19 years old at this time, and he knew this girl was 12. When the girl's mother was out of the house, Stephen supplied her with alcohol before R-wording her several times, and he did this again at a lake nearby. The next day, he flies back home, probably assuming he's going to get away with it. But in January 2016, he was extradited back to the UK and arrested. 2 months later, he pleads guilty to 3 counts of R-wording a minor. The victim ended up making a statement in court about how this traumatic experience affected her, saying that she had at times harmed herself and even survived an OD. A UK judge sentenced him to 4 years in prison and basically said his dreams of performing at the Olympics were crushed. But unfortunately, he was wrong. His conviction was substituted for Dutch law, which was basically way less, and he only served 1 year in prison. In his first interview talking about the crime in 2018, he said that he was a lost teenager still figuring things out. Apparently, Stephen has shown no remorse, and the people around him don't seem to care at all. He's currently married with a young child and bound for the 2024 Olympics.
How? Man, I'm telling you guys, bro, like I said, watching these videos with you, man, the justice system, bro, it's an ever ongoing battle, bro, to get it to equal footing. All these cases we hear around the world.
These are human body parts that may disappear in the future. First up is body hair. Originally, it protected ancient humans from harsh weather conditions. However, over time, with modern clothes and changes in environmental conditions, human body hair has significantly decreased and continues to do so. Many scientists believe it might eventually completely disappear. Next are wisdom teeth. They used to serve an evolutionary purpose for ancient humans who had much rougher diets and needed more chewing power. But our diets have softened and our jaws have become increasingly smaller. As a result, they have no space to properly grow in, and many people need to have them surgically removed. Many babies are now being born without wisdom teeth, and scientists believe this will eventually be the standard. Finally, we have male nipples. Everyone starts as female in the womb, and before the Y chromosome kicks in for males, nipples have already formed. When the baby becomes male, the prolactin levels decrease, making the male nipples non-functional. So while it's debated, some scientists think they'll disappear.
This is proof that you have a higher chance of surviving if you sit at the back of a plane. But first, let's talk about the fact that there's been about 4 plane crashes or major malfunctions in the past week. The plane going to South Korea, 179 people passed away and only 2 survived. The plane crash in Kazakhstan, 38 people passed away and 29 survived. But what's common in both of these incidents is that the people that survived were sitting at the back of the plane. The 2 flight attendants on the flight to South Korea were sitting right here and they survived. Obviously, in this particular scenario, it was a very severe plane crash. Everyone passed away, unfortunately, but it goes to show that sitting at the back, you have a possibility of surviving. And the same thing happened with the plane crash in Kazakhstan. The tail of the plane had less damage, therefore more people survived. After seeing all this proof, I'm only riding at the back of the plane moving forward. I don't care if it takes me longer to get in and out. I'm just gonna be in the back.
This pool should
clock it. Bro, fun fact, I've never flown on a plane before, Seekers. Maybe like I said, one day in the future, I know I'm gonna have to, but getting this info, man, watching these videos with you guys, bring me the back seat. That's all I want, man. I don't even want to sit in the front of boy, have my old freaking, first class, bro. I'm fine with the back, bro. Give me that back seat. I'll gladly accept it. Hey, bro. We learning.
Should not exist. In Brisbane, Australia, there's something called the Cage of Death in Crocosaurus Cove. You'll be trapped in a plastic cage that is then lowered by a small crane into crocodile-infested waters. Most people assume this is probably safe, but in 2015, this was caught on camera. When these 2 friends were lowered into the water, the cables that were holding them up actually broke off, which startled the crocodile, which then tried to attack them. After this footage went viral, the park was forced to shut down and has not been opened ever since.
Hardest languages to learn. Albanian. 5.1 years. Finnish. 5.3 years. Hungarian. 5.4 years.
It's like half your damn life.
Vietnamese. 5.5 years. Korean. 5.8 years. Japanese. 6 years. Arabic. 6.2 years. Filipino. 6.7 years. Mandarin.
Mandarin.
7 years.
If anybody, man, that goes to show you how dedicated a person is, man, if they know other languages, bro. It's hard enough learning English speaking kids, now taking on a whole nother language.
This is the world's most expensive underwater hotel room, and to get there, you need to go down your own private elevator. Right when you step out, you're greeted by your new neighbors, the fish. And then this hallway leads to the incredible bedroom. All of the walls, even the ceilings, are made of glass. You're surrounded by marine life. Imagine waking up to sharks just swimming over your head. You have an area here to relax, but that's not even the best part. Look at this bathroom. These toilet views are insane. The toilet and shower underwater doesn't make any sense to me at all, but this has to be the coolest place in the world to use the bathroom. This is the Maraca at the Conrad Maldives. This is crazy. Crazy history facts that school did not teach you. In the 16th century, it was common to wear live mice as accessories. A cow named Pauline was the first cow to fly in an airplane in 1930. Cleopatra, the last pharaoh of Egypt, was Greek and not Egyptian. The word sabotage comes from French workers throwing their wooden shoes, called sabots, into machinery to disrupt production. Ancient Egyptians practiced a form of birth control that involved the use of crocodile dung. Sir Isaac Newton once stuck a needle in his eye to test his theory of color. The first words ever said on the telephone were by Alexander Graham Bell in 1876, and they were, "Mr. Watson, come here, I want to see you." For more.
These are the craziest things discovered underground. In 2018, a farmer named James was digging in his backyard to install a drainage pipe, and that's when he found the skull of a woolly mammoth, which was 14,000 years old. Archaeologists say that humans hunted it and then buried it right there in the ground. And in 2015 in Argentina, Jose Antonio wanted to take a breath of fresh air right by this water, and that's when he found a large round object. This was a shell of an armadillo that was 10,000 years old. According to the shell, armadillos at the time would grow to about 11 feet. After this discovery, many other armadillo shells would appear randomly around our facility. These are the deadliest animals.
Could you imagine an armadillo that size, bro? What was going on, man, back in the day? You gotta think about the evolutionary chain. Imagine freaking that big armadillo walking around, you seeing that. Good BB.
In your state. If you're in California, rattlesnakes are not your friend. And in Florida, it's mosquitoes, so you better have bug spray. And if you're in Wisconsin, you better fear the deer, because they're most likely to send you to heaven. And Texas is blood rafting fire ants. You do not want to mess with these things. In Rhode Island, the most deadly animal is the black widow. Alabama and Arizona, you better watch out for dogs. And Hawaii is tiger shark, so if you go in the ocean, watch out.
So this is real.
Be careful.
Benjamin Netanyahu, yesterday, as of the 29th of December 2024, was diagnosed with grade 3 prostate cancer. And today, as of the 30th of December 2024, he got his prostates removed. So Benjamin Netanyahu officially does not have balls. Like, literally. What a great way to start New Year's Eve. Allah's real. Assalamu alaikum.
That's insane, bro.
These actors do the exact same thing in every movie.
Talk
Tom Cruise
about it.
always demands that he shows off his speed. He makes sure to run in all of his movies, because according to him, he can run 18 miles per hour. And nobody really knows why, but Leonardo DiCaprio loves to raise a glass and cheers. He does this in every one of his movies. And you've totally seen the meme of The Rock lifting one eyebrow. But did you know this is literally his signature move in every single movie? Which is actually crazy, because only about 20% of people can lift one eyebrow. Who killed John Benet Ramsey? One of the world's biggest cold cases in history is being re-examined in Netflix's Solve John
Juan Miranda Jara, now 25, entered a gift of a minor under 14. Miranda Jara showed up on July 14, 2021 at Hillcrest Hospital in Midtown Tulsa with a 12-year-old girl in mid-labor expecting to become a proud new father, but he ended up under arrest. They walked in just like any other couple would, excited to deliver their newborn child, said police. When officers arrived, Miranda Jara proudly said he was the father of the child the 12-year-old was about to give birth to and acted unsure as to why police were even getting involved. Officers believe Miranda Jara was fully expecting to go home with his child girlfriend and newborn baby. However, the age of consent in Oklahoma is 16. Juan Miranda Jara stated that he was in a relationship with the 12-year-old victim that started in October of 2020. Miranda Jara admitted that he is the biological father of the 12-year-old's baby. Many in the community began to ask where the victim's parents were, and 2 weeks later the Tulsa Police Department arrested the girl's mother. Authorities have said that Desiree Castaneda and other family members knew all about her daughter's relationship and pregnancy. Investigators say Castaneda was aware of her child's interaction with 24-year-old Juan Miranda Jara and approved of their relationship. TPD also says there are photos of the family throwing a baby shower for the victim and the suspect. Castaneda is awaiting trial on charges for child neglect and enabling child sex abuse.
In this 2004 murder case, Centoya Brown never knew her biological dad, and her mum drank throughout her pregnancy. Her mum also used other substances and eventually put Centoya up for adoption. Centoya began getting in trouble with the law, and she was kept under the custody of the Department of Children's Services. She ended up leaving and being classed as a runaway in 2004. Whilst having nowhere to live, she was trafficked by a man called Cutthroat. At this point, she was only 15 years old. He would threaten and beat her to maintain control over her. When Centoya was 16, she met a man named Johnny Allen at a Sonic car park. He was 43 and asked her if she was up for any action. She agreed to this for $150, and the pair went back to Johnny's house. Now, Johnny's friends and family deny that he was actually trying to meet up with her for personal gain. They said that he was just concerned about her. A minor who worked at a local restaurant also claimed that Johnny Allen would chat up underage girls and make them feel very uncomfortable. Centoya claims that the pair never ended up having a sexual encounter. However, at some point at Johnny's house, we do know that Centoya ended up shooting him in the head. She stole $172 and 2 firearms and escaped in his truck. She then abandoned the truck and went back to Cutthroat to give him the money and the firearms. Police discovered the pair at a local hotel. She was arrested and charged with homicide, aggravated robbery, handgun possession, and criminal impersonation. So why did Kim Kardashian get involved with this case? Why does she want to help Centoya? I really hate to be this person, but frustratingly, TikTok has taken away my 10-minute feature, so I can't do long videos on here. I have just posted this full video on my YouTube, so please do go over there and check it out if you're interested.
I wonder if she ever free. Did Kim K get her out? Because you know she's on her lawyer journey now, so I remember seeing that case popping up a couple of times. I'm gonna have to go down the rabbit hole on that one. That was an insane case.
Me and my daughters were killed by the person who we thought is our biggest protector, my husband and their dad, Chris Watts. My name is Sean N. Watts. In 2012, we got married, and together we built a life that I thought was picture perfect. I embraced my role as a mother to our 2 precious daughters, Bella and Celeste. I was also expecting my 3rd child. But in August 2018, everything came crashing down. Me and my 2 daughters were reported missing by my close friend. The police were called, and the frantic search for us began. The hours turned into days, and the truth slowly unraveled. It was revealed that Chris was involved in our disappearance. I was strangled to death and buried, and my daughters were dumped into the crude oil tanks. He did this just because he wanted to leave us to be with his girlfriend. Though my life was cut short, I hope that my story inspires others to stand against violence and to honor the memory of those whose lives have been unjustly taken.
That Chris Watts case. To this day, I
This is
still
the
don't
UK's
understand.
most famous missing boy. In September 2007, Andrew Gosden was just 14 years old. He was a very intelligent boy and was top of his class in most classes at school. He was an introvert that usually spent most of his time at home. The day before Andrew went missing seemed completely normal. He went to school, he had some tea, and then he watched some TV. However, on September the 14th, he seemed more irritable than normal. Instead of getting the bus to school that morning like his parents thought he was, he went to a cash point and withdrew £200. CCTV then captures him walking home, where he changed his clothes into a Slipknot t-shirt. When he left the house, he didn't take his charger with him, and he also didn't take £100 that he'd saved up. He didn't take his passport, but he did take his house key, which indicates he was going to come home. He bought a one-way ticket to London and was last seen leaving King's Cross station at about 11:30. Frustratingly, the school had actually tried to contact Andrew's parents to say that he hadn't turned up to school that day, but they dialed the wrong number and left an answer phone message on the wrong phone. His family was completely cleared of any suspicion, and the family and the school and all of the students went to London and they were handing out loads of flyers. Weirdly, a year after this incident, a man came to a police station to say that he had information about Andrew. Now, the police station was unmanned, so the person spoke to this man just over an intercom system and sent a police officer down there. Mysteriously, by the time the police officer arrived, the person had vanished. This is what Andrew might look like now, just being the age that he may be if he's still alive. Theories about this case is that he may have gone to London to meet up with someone or go to a concert. Was he lured there by somebody with bad intentions, or was he just going there for the day, gonna come back, and was at the wrong place at the wrong time and somebody did something bad to him? In 2009, the family paid for a search of the River Thames to try and find some sort of closure. The search did find a body, but it wasn't Andrew's. The most up-to-date information that we have on this case is that 2 men were arrested on suspicion of kidnapping Andrew, but they've actually been released.
That's one of my biggest fears, man. One day you could just disappear off the face of the earth. You're going somewhere, and something completely different just changes your path. You gotta be careful, Seekers.
I'm not trying to alarm anyone, but I think everyone living in Oregon should be aware of what's about to happen. This is Richard Gilmore, also known as the Serial. He's been in prison since 1987 after being found guilty of sexually assaulting a 13-year-old girl. But he admitted to sexually assaulting 9 other girls and women. Unfortunately, he wasn't tried for the other attacks because they fell just outside the statute of limitations. He got his nickname because he would case out his victims' homes in Portland, Oregon in the 70s and 80s while jogging, and he would return later to attack. Well, after having his sentence cut in half just 1 year after being convicted, Richard is about to be released from prison on December 16th of this year. He will be released into transitional housing in Multnomah County, but the most disgusting part is that once released, he will only be classified as a level 1 sex offender, which is considered at the lowest risk of reoffending. This is shocking to me because the last psychological evaluation that was done on him was done in 2016, and that evaluation deemed him dangerous to society stemming from a mental or emotional disorder predisposing him to crime. Once released from prison, he will be on supervision until 2034. But even though he'll have to register as a sex offender for the rest of his life, because he is classified as a level 1 offender, the state and county is not required to notify any of his neighbors that he is a sex offender. This is so scary as a parent that someone with this violent of a history could possibly move in next door with absolutely no warning. His victims are outraged that he isn't being classified as a higher level offender, especially considering that at the time of his trial, he was labeled a very dangerous offender. What's even scarier is that right now it's being reported that Richard could be required to have no contact with his victims. Could be? I'm sorry, but that is absolutely just not enough. I can't even imagine how they must be feeling right now. So if you live in Oregon, please be aware that this man will be released on December 16th, and please stay safe.
Gotta be aware, man. I told you, the justice system, it goes up and down.
This is the case that taught me that some fates are worse than death. Blanche Monnier was born in France on March 1st, 1849, into a very bourgeoisie family. She grew into a socialite and was sought after by many, many suitors as she was very well known for her stunning good looks. When she was 25 years old, she fell in love with an older lawyer, but her mother refused to let her marry a penniless lawyer and did everything in her power to end the relationship. Blanche could not be swayed despite her mother's best efforts, and one day the beautiful young girl simply vanished. Her mother and brother publicly mourned her loss and told everyone they thought she'd just run away. And then one day in 1901, 25 years after she disappeared, the Attorney General of Paris received an anonymous note. The The note read, quote, Monsieur Attorney General, I have the honor to inform you of an exceptionally serious occurrence. I speak of a spinster who is locked up in Madame Monnier's house, half-starved and living on putrid litter for the past 25 years, in a word, in her own filth. Luckily, the police took the note seriously, went to the home to investigate, and initially Blanche's mother wouldn't let them in the home, but they forced their way through and into the house. On the second floor of the home, they found a, quote, tiny, dark, foul-smelling room, and when they pried open the windows, they were horrified by what they saw. Blanche was on a bed in the room, covered in her own filth, quote, a gaunt creature with abundant black hair hiding her body. Blanche had shrunk to just over 50 pounds and was, quote, covered in food and her own filth with bugs all around the bed and the floor. She had been locked in that room for 25 years without sunlight or human interaction, was clearly underfed, and barely looked human. Quote, Blanche seemed like a scared animal when the officers took her out of there. One officer said, quote, the unfortunate woman was lying without clothes on a rotten straw mattress. All around her was formed a sort of crust made from her own filth, fragments of meat, vegetables, fish, and rotten bread. We also saw oyster shells and bugs running across Mademoiselle Monnier's bed. The air was so unbreathable, the odor given off by the room was so rank that it was impossible for us to stay any longer to proceed with our investigation. The New York Times reported, quote, time passed and Blanche was no longer young. The attorney she so loved died in 1885. During all that time, the girl was confined to the lonely room, fed with scraps from her mother's table when she received any food at all. Not a ray of light penetrated her dungeon, and what she suffered can only be surmised. Blanche's brother was sentenced to 15 months for his role in the crime, but was later released because he never physically restricted her movements in any way. Blanche's mother was arrested but passed away in prison just 15 days later. Blanche was too far gone to return to society, so she was committed to a mental hospital where she passed away just 12 years later.
25 years without no solid sunlight? Because she didn't let her daughter marry who she wanted to. Society back in the day. They was tripping, bro.
Imagine being buried under a kitchen floor. This is the horrific true crime of Andrew Innes, requested by a follower. Back in 2020, Benny Lynn Burke, the 25-year-old Filipino mother, was sat at home, like many of us, during the lockdown in the UK. Her home was far from where she was raised. It was in Bristol in England. After heading to the UK a couple of years earlier from the Philippines back in 2019, Benny Lynn Burke was expecting a happy and new adventure with her husband, Lexington. They met in her homeland, fell in love, got married before making the big decision to leave her homeland and return to the UK with Lexington, a decision that would later leave her viciously mutilated. Her and her husband would have a beautiful little girl together, which they would name Jellica. Unfortunately, family life wasn't meant to be for the three of them, as it's claimed that Lexington became more aggressive since returning back to the UK, a different character to the one that Benny Lynn had met. The couple would decide to end their relationship mutually. Benny Lynn was now stuck in a foreign land to her, in Bristol, during a pandemic. The only little light she had was the little Jellica. She decided to try and meet someone new and joined a dating site called Filipinian Cupid. Initially looking to perhaps find another Filipinian to date, but instead she found a much older Scottish man named Andrew Innes. Andrew had smarts for sure. He had been at Aberdeen University. He was a computer gaming engineer. At 52 years old, however, he was over double Benny Lynn's age and had some baggage too. Allegedly had previously been married to a Japanese woman over in Japan where he had children with her too, before breaking up and then being deported back to the UK. A similar story to Benny Lynn's in a sense. At first, Benny Lynn was a bit put off by this, but over time she started to think on it. Probably with the loneliness in her life as well, she decided to give love another chance. Big mistake. They'd strike up a relationship online at first, and apparently Andrew had even offered a £1,000 a month job to Benny Lynn. She didn't want to leave Bristol where she had settled, but Andrew wanted her and Jellica in Dundee, Scotland with him. A whopping 440 miles separated the pair. 18th of February 2021, the couple would decide to meet and Benny Lynn would get a chance to see the sights of Dundee. Little 2-year-old Jellica would come along too. A couple of weeks later, there had been no sign of Benilyn Burke and her daughter Jellica. Benilyn's sister had tried to contact her and at first was greeted with text message replies, but then started to get responses from Andrew instead. It said that she demanded a video with Benilyn, and instead all she received was an old one. Andrew Innes had palmed this off. He claimed that she had gone off with another man near Glasgow and he hadn't seen her since. Lexington, Benilyn's ex, had also tried to contact her for his custody visit of Jellica with 2 text messages and a missed call. There's talks that Andrew had claimed that Lexington was trying to take Jellica from Benilyn, so Benilyn had shut off her phone and fled, so this couldn't happen. It was all sounding very suspicious, and Shella, the sister, was extremely and rightfully worried. The police were soon in action. They had a missing 25-year-old and 2-year-old. At first they tried to gain access to Andrew's residence, but he refused. March the 5th, 2 weeks after Benilyn and Jellica had gone with Andrew, they managed to track Andrew Innes' vehicle doing that long distance to and from Bristol. That same vehicle was sat on his Troon Avenue driveway. With this evidence now pointing directly at Andrew, they decided to proceed and question him. Notably, there was a 7-year-old young girl sat on the sofa in the living room watching cartoons. Andrew Innes stated that this was his daughter. Under intense interrogation, Andrew Innes told detectives that same story, that Benilyn had gone off to be with another man. Mounting pressure onto Innes, the police would keep poking holes into the 52-year-old story. During this time, he had claimed that they had broken off the relationship when he had looked at her phone and seen that she was seeing other men, before he would admit to killing Benilyn Burke and say, "She's under the kitchen floor." The police would unfortunately find out that the 7-year-old girl in his house was in fact not his daughter, but in fact would be another victim of this depraved murderer. With her testimony, this is what happened.
Pine, Arizona. Now this is an older picture, but I will show you what he looked like after the attack. He was alone at the cabin watching YouTube on the TV when the bear came in through the side door, came up behind him, reached around, and started swiping at his face. He has a rare neurological condition, so he can't move very fast, but after swiping him in the face, the bear turned around and left. Except it came back and started swiping him in the arms. Brigham's older brother heard him screaming, and he, along with their father, ran back to the cabin to see what was going on, and thankfully they were able to chase the bear away. I'm going to give you a trigger warning before I show you the picture because it's a little graphic. You can see one of the swipes there across his nose, and there's another one on his arm. He was transported to a local hospital and treated for the wounds. They also gave him a rabies vaccine. Law enforcement killed the bear about 120 feet away from the cabin, and its body was sent to a state lab for examinations and rabies testing. Officials want to warn everybody, if you happen to come across a black bear that is coming towards you, don't run from it. Back away slowly while maintaining eye contact with the bear and do things to make yourself appear bigger than you are. And they say that you can also throw things and yell and try to scare him away. Thank God the brother heard him screaming, or they could be planning a funeral right now.
There's a dark secret.
Man, always be aware, and I learned some new facts today. Seekers. I've been seeing people, man. I've seen a couple of videos, you know, people, they be, I guess, like, they try to run away from the bears and stuff. I never heard they said, stand your ground, throw things, yell. Hey, man, we learned some survival skills today, man. Tap in with us.
Secret to why we celebrate our birthdays. I don't know if it's a conspiracy theory or if it's true, but it blew my mind. Okay. So according to the stories and what I've heard, is you know how we chant, happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you.
The song.
And chanting that is actually a ritual against us. Oh, these noodles taste like your mom's booty. And you know how I like your mom's booty. I know it sounds crazy, but hear me out though. You notice how happy birthday is like a chant. You light the candles, turn off a light, you all get in a circle, you start chanting, and then you blow out the candles. Tell me that's not portraying a ritual experience.
He's spitting.
Now, let me tell you what I heard the ritual does. But first, what month and day were you born? Let me know down below. I want to know what sign you are. Me, I was born August 29th, and I'm a Virgo. Anyways, it is said that when we do that, it's a ritual that's sealing our fate to grow older. And that's why some people believe that people who don't celebrate their birthdays tend to look younger than they actually are. Now look, this is all conspiracy, and it's circling around the internet right now. But it's kind of scary to think about.
I would preface this story.
You guys believe
a photo
that?
like this is my actual worst nightmare. It's Julie Watts and her husband Jonathan. And on December 2nd, 2017, Julie was home alone when her phone pinged, detecting motion in the downstairs camera. This was the frame that was shown on her phone. Before we dive in, if you're a fan of true crime, make sure to go click the link in my bio to listen to my podcast, Creep Time the Podcast, on Spotify or Apple. She saw this photo and she immediately jumps into action. She locks her bedroom door, she calls 911, she starts texting her husband Jonathan, who's all the way in Minneapolis on business. After a few minutes, she gets another alert on her phone that there was motion detected in the downstairs bedroom. This was the photo sent to her phone. I know it's hard to see, but if you flip this picture upside down, it is somebody who is back crawling out of a closet. Julie did not survive this attack, as when police arrived, they came upon a gruesome display where Julie's hands had been taken. Police had no idea who could have done this. This was the final text exchange that was surfaced from her phone.
Man, that final message.
This is why it's so important that you get into the correct Uber. On March 29th, 2019, 21-year-old Samantha Josephson entered an Uber that she thought was hers, and she was never seen again. On this day, Samantha met with some friends at the Bird Dog Bar and left to go home at around 2 a.m. She ended up waiting alone in front of the bar for her Uber ride. And at 2:09, she's seen on surveillance entering this black Chevy Impala. Samantha's boyfriend, who lived in another state, was tracking her ride and noticed that the driver was going the opposite direction from her house. He tried to call her, but after getting no response, he fell asleep, and the next morning, Samantha's friends called him and asked him if he knew where she was because she never made it to work. They reported Samantha missing and asked to see surveillance footage from the bar and noticed that Samantha entered the car of 24-year-old Nathaniel Rowland. That night, Nathaniel locked his doors after Samantha entered his car, and he took her to a secluded area and stabbed her more than 100 times. He then went to an ATM and tried to withdraw money from her card twice. The next day, Nathaniel's car was spotted by a police officer. He was arrested and was eventually sentenced to life in prison.
Man, see, stories like this makes me wary of Uber, Lyft, all those services. I rode in them like a couple of times, when you had to, but when I get in one, man, I'm always aware, bro. Always by the door in case something weird try to go down and they try to do something to me. I'm like, I refuse to have something happen to me in the Uber Lyft. I can't go like that. Tell me down below if you guys have any weird experience, man, with those Uber Lyft rides. Edit. You guys know we call them out when we see them. That's definitely an edit.
Get ready with me while I tell you how this woman threw her boyfriend's private part in the trash.
What?
On May 14th of this year, around 8:50 p.m., 32-year-old Shengting Gua had called officers because she believed that her boyfriend was dead, but she could not provide a reason why. Officers with the Grand Junction Police Department have responded to that call, and they went to the Wood Spring Suites on Main Street. The dispatcher stated that while Shengting was on the line, she was given CPR instructions and she was hysterical. When officers arrived at the hotel room, they saw a bed with a large amount of blood smeared all over it, and Shengting was crying and upset. That's when they spotted a naked, unresponsive man, and he was lying on his back and his feet were under the bed. The officers then started to do CPR on the man, and that's when they noticed that his private part was missing. Officers were looking around the hotel room. They ended up finding his severed private part in the trash can that was in the bathroom. The man was then pronounced dead at the scene. Shengting had told officers that she found out she was pregnant, and her boyfriend were arguing on who the father could be. She stated that while they were arguing, she did stab him in the leg, but she was not trying to kill him. She only stabbed him because she was angry. Once she had stabbed him, she then cut off his private part. At that point, she didn't think that he was in any kind of pain, so she went to the store, bought some beer, antibiotics, and rubbing alcohol. As the day went on, she noticed that he started to feel cold and she had feared that he might die, so she gave him some water, ibuprofen, and greens. Shengting was arrested and charged with second-degree murder and will appear in court on May 22nd.
This man lost his life
Crazy
after
case.
his pet hippo turned on him. Marius Els adopted 5-month-old baby Humphrey and took him to live in his 400-acre farm in South Africa. When Humphrey was a baby, everything was fine, but a lot of people warned Marius how dangerous Humphrey can become when he gets bigger. Marius ignored everyone and treated Humphrey like a pet. He would even ride on his back for fun and showed zero fear of this hippo. But it wasn't long until Humphrey got bigger and he eventually reached 1.2 tons and attacked Marius's nephew and almost killed him. But that's not all. In 2011, Humphrey attacked Marius in front of his family and took his life. This all happened when Marius called Humphrey to eat, and according to Marius's family, Humphrey's demeanor was different on this day, basically showing signs of aggression. Marius believed that his pet hippo would never betray him, so he ignored all these signs. When he continued to call Humphrey out of the water to eat, Humphrey suddenly stormed out and attacked Marius, biting into his body multiple times and then dragging him into the water. And this all happened in front of his family, the same people that warned Marius about Humphrey. What's crazy is that even though hippos look super sweet and cute compared to other wild animals, they actually kill more people each year than any other mammal on this planet. Just something to keep in mind.
I never knew that, man. Like I said, you see that picture of that baby hippo, you think it's all sweet and innocent, man, but people at the end of the day, they gotta realize, like, these are wild animals. You're trying to keep them, trying to domesticate them as pets. It never ends well. We just saw a case of that. I saw, a picture on Twitter. They be like, how, when the hippos be all sweet and innocent as a baby, but they really some menaces.
This is a personal case a viewer emailed over to me asking to share, and the purpose for this video is to raise awareness on DA and GV. And I apologize in advance for the severe censoring, as I have to. On September 1st, 2023, a girl named Faith and her boyfriend Isaiah were fast asleep while his two cousins and older brother were staying over. In the middle of the night, Faith was jolted awake by the sound of a gun going off. Her and her boyfriend ran to cover until they realized that the gun that was fired happened inside the apartment and was from Isaiah's older brother, Ronald Adams. Ronald had his cousin. The couple brought him to the hospital in an attempt to save his life, but were unsuccessful, and Faith and Isaiah were questioning why Ronald would take someone's life. In the email, Faith let me know Ronald was under the influence of shrooms during the crime. Now, let me be clear, research shows mushrooms do not make a person act out in violence, and Faith is advocating for Ronald to receive life in prison. Since then, her and Isaiah have been responsible for over $7,000 in fees due to the crime happening in her apartment. If you want to help out, here's her GoFundMe, and what are your thoughts on this case? Let me know in the comments below.
Don't do drugs. That's what I took from that. You never know, man. Especially from... Stay away from stuff like that.
Insanely dark facts and things that have happened
Crazy.
at Disney World. When Disney had first opened way back in the 70s, Walt Disney had originally hired spies. He would station them around the park so they could eavesdrop on the guests and get a feel for how they actually liked the experience. It's pretty much common knowledge that Disney does have an underground tunnel system, but did you know that that system runs a full 9 acres under the park, and people have actually gotten lost down there?
Damn.
Roughly 10 or so years ago, there was an incident that was reported near Space Mountain when a guest tried to sneak on a duffel bag. When employees found out and they asked to search it, they found inside a 6-month-old baby. Why this parent was trying to sneak a baby onto a roller coaster, we do not know. In a lesser-known incident that Disney actually covered up pretty well, in 2004, a 38-year-old cast member who was playing Pluto was run over by the Beauty and the Beast float during the opening parade. Although clearly deceased at the scene, Disney refused to declare the death until the body was brought outside of the park.
Things people do for money, man. Doesn't even shock me anymore.
Alright guys, let's talk about the Dear David incident. The Dear David incident is when Adam Ellis tweeted about a ghost haunting him inside of his apartment. He tweeted, "So my apartment is currently being haunted by the ghost of a dead child and he's trying to kill me." He gives very detailed accounts of what he sees during sleep paralysis. He states he sees a child with a dented head and that the child is trying to hurt him. The next day, he dreamed about a little girl and she was explaining who this creature was. She said its name was David. She stated he only appears at midnight and you can ask him 2 questions if you preface it with Dear David, and if you ask him a third, he kills you. Before he got photo proof of David, he drew a sketch of a dented-headed child. Then one day he managed to snag this picture and this picture. Even his 2 cats were gathering by a door where he saw David. They could just tell something was on the other side. In one instance, he went to take a Polaroid of his lit hallway and it was completely dark. A user found this face inside of it though. Ooh. This man had a plethora of evidence, posted it all on Twitter. Comment for part 2.
What do we think about Dear David? Some bad energy? Or something else? Even the cats by the door, man. Even they were picking that up. You know it's different when an animal can kind of pick up that type of spirit. At it.
This is such a crazy story. In 1998, 17-year-old Omar bin Omran went missing while on his way to school in the city of Jaffa, Algeria. After his disappearance, his family assumed he passed away during the civil war that was going on at the time. While everyone accepted the fact that Omar was gone forever, his dog, on the other hand, knew where he was the entire time. 26 long years go by and his family makes a crazy discovery. Omar, who is now 45 years old, was found. At around 8 p.m. on that day, police arrived to the home and walked to the back of the house and lifted up what seems to be a hidden entryway, and they found Omar in a cellar where this man kept sheep, and Omar was located and was sitting under a pile of hay. There's this blurry video that was taken of him while he was being rescued.
Imagine slicing your face up with a chainsaw. Well, that's exactly what happened to this man here, Bill Singleton. Now, Bill was 68 years old at the time, and when all of this happened, he was home alone. And on that day, he decided he was going to take his trusty chainsaw and cut down some firewood. Now, this is something that he had done quite regularly, so he was very familiar with how to use the chainsaw. But in the middle of cutting down through some trees, he realized that the tip of the chainsaw struck a very large tree, which forced the chainsaw to repel backwards. Before he realized exactly what was happening, the chainsaw went right into his face. Immediately, he said he felt and heard the crack of his jaw as the blade went right through it. And as you can imagine, the pain was completely unbearable, and all he could think to do was to grab a handkerchief he had and cover his face. Although there was blood gushing everywhere, he did not fully realize the extent of his injuries at this point. And also at this point, he was not able to call anyone just because of the state he was in, so he did the only thing he could think of, and that was to get to help by himself. By some miracle, he was able to crawl his way to where he had parked his truck, get in, and again, by another miracle, drive his way to the closest hospital. Now, while he was driving, he did manage to get there with one hand while using the other to keep the handkerchief on his face. He also instinctively knew that he should not look at himself in the mirror because that would have just sent him spiraling. And even doctors agreed that it was a very good thing that he did not look at himself in the mirror in that state because it could have potentially sent him into shock. Now, there are photos of him in the hospital with a bunch of stitches where you can see the extent of his injuries, but they are very graphic. But because I can't show you those pictures, I will show you this, and it's a 3D model of what the injuries looked like. Essentially what happened is that the blade of the chainsaw had sliced through the middle of his face, cutting down his mouth and tongue before knocking out his front teeth and slicing right through his jaw. Now, thankfully, doctors were able to save his life considering that he barely missed a very vital artery. And Bill would go on to make a full recovery, and you can barely see the scar on his face at this point. But this is exactly why I will never go around a chainsaw.
Neither will I. I'll just be more careful around them now. I'm just like, that's a crazy story, but do you guys know the willpower you have to crawl and then drive and hold it all at the same time? Your mind's spiraling, man. You just gotta be calm, focused, and centered, try to ignore the pain. It's one of the most bizarre stories, and he survived too.
So do you guys want to learn about a creature that's actually scarier than the Native American skinwalker? A lot of you have not heard of this, and is actually believed to be the reason why so many people go missing in the national forest. Check this out. Let me know what you think, and let me know if you have actually heard about this.
Here we go.
Alright, so unfortunately, the original origins of the flesh gates, as what are these creatures called, are not known. A lot of people believe that they're cursed spirits, evil spirits, or an unknown cryptid that we haven't discovered. And they like to wreak havoc, and actually people, when they encounter these, most people don't survive to tell the tale. They are also shapeshifters, and unfortunately for a lot of us that live in the United States, they have been sighted in national forests where a lot of people go missing and disappearing without a trace. So one of the things that we are warned through Native Americans is never to whistle when you're out in the woods, and there's a reason for that. This particular creature actually is attracted to people when they're whistling out and about in the woods. So in general, they are predatory against humans, and many believe that they lure people by attracting you and calling you by name or trying to mimic somebody you actually love. Let me know if you want to learn more about this in part 2.
That's just a different version of a skinwalker, right? That's what I took from that. The skinwalkers, creatures like this, man, would be seeing sightings. You guys believe that? Or do you guys think they're just stories?
This girl took the life of her whole family so she could be with a supposed 300-year-old werewolf.
What the f?
This is Jasmine Richardson, and she lived with her family in Medicine Hat, Canada. She was known as being very joyful and outgoing. Jasmine's whole personality changed when she met 23-year-old Jeremy at a punk rock concert. Both started to date despite the huge age difference. Jasmine had joined a website called vampirefreaks.com and fell in love with the goth lifestyle. She would wear heavy makeup to make it seem like she was much older than she really was. At the age of 13, Jeremy had identified himself as a 300-year-old werewolf, and he would wear this necklace that had a little jar and it had blood inside of it. Supposedly, Jeremy would go out to the moon, howl at it, and that's when he would turn into a werewolf. Jasmine's parents, Mark and Deborah, found out about her relationship with Jeremy and him being 23 years old and her only 12 years old.
What the f?
And they forbid her from seeing him. Jasmine and Jeremy did not take this lightly, and they were coming up with a plan to take the life of her family. On April 23rd of 2006, Jasmine and Jeremy went through with their plan and took the life of her family, her parents, and her brother.
Damn.
Following day, a young boy went to Jasmine's house to hang out with her 8-year-old brother, and when he was waiting at the door, he could see in the window that there was a dead body, so he ran back to his mom's house, told his mom, and she is the one who informed police. Once law enforcement arrived at the scene, they noticed that the whole family was murdered. Went up to the 8-year-old boy's room, and that's when they saw him just laying there with his lightsaber in his hand. Law enforcement also noticed that Jasmine was the only one missing. Jasmine and Jeremy were both arrested for the crime. Jasmine was found guilty of 3 counts of first-degree murder, and since she was under the age of 18, she was only sentenced to 6 years in jail, and after that, she followed 4 years of supervision in the community. Jeremy was also found guilty of 3 counts of first-degree murder, and he was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In 2016, Jasmine was released from prison and is walking free.
Who is the...
Because they're that young, man, they really can't go to the full extent of the crimes, but... 300... How does people come up with these things in their head? He was a 300-year-old werewolf. And that huge age gap between them. See, when discuss the name and talk about, that's just like, man, people are weird beings.
The youngest serial killer of all time. He has been called sadistic, remorseless, and committed his first murder at the age of only 7. Amarjit Sada was born in Bihar, India in 1998. Considered a loner and born into a poor family, the addition of his baby sister to the family made it much harder for his parents to make ends meet. When his aunt came to pay a visit with his 6-year-old cousin, he was left in charge while his mother and aunt went to the market. That was the day that his life took a dark and very twisted turn. It started off with him slapping and pinching his cousin before it escalated to him strangling her to death. When the parents returned, the girl's whereabouts were questioned and he immediately admitted to the murder, as well as showing them the location of the body. It was decided that this was simply a family matter and that it should not be reported. But it was less than a year later that he would strike again. This time, his own baby sister was the target, lifting her from the cot and strangling her. He was discovered by his mother, and he said he did it, just like that. But this time, neighbors actually discovered the crime, and his parents pleaded them to keep it a secret. His last victim was horrifically a 6-month-old baby from the village. The mother of the baby told police that she left the baby sleeping while she went and did chores, and when she came back, the baby was gone, and a police investigation was immediately started. Hours after the police started looking for the baby, Sada freely admitted to killing her by hitting her with bricks and strangling her, and then even led police to the shallow grave he attempted to bury her in. The young boy was taken into custody and interviewed, where it was reported that he showed absolutely no remorse, even smiling throughout the interview. He was much too young to send to prison or even give the death penalty, so he was sent to a juvenile home. Psychiatrists determined that he received much pleasure from harming others. The world's youngest serial killer was given a new identity and released in 2016 when he turned 18 years old, and his current whereabouts are completely unknown.
Telling you, man, justice system, it's like trying to tilt towards another way where it should be here. It's like right there or right there. It's never can find an equal spot. Makes no sense, man. This world we living in, seekers. If you guys stay with me to the end of the video, you're true seekers seeking the truth. I really appreciate the support, man. Like I said, guys, hit that like button, subscribe, hit that post notification bell. That's how we could grow in this algorithm, man. Also, follow me on my social medias down below so we can stay connected as a community. Like I said, you guys can send me videos if you guys want what you want me to check out. So, guys, get on that. Like I said, we're doing daily uploads every single day. Hopefully, you guys enjoy them, man. We're gonna keep going. We're gonna continue to get better with each and every single video. I'm out. Peace, YouTube.